Hello, I am Ruby Falconer, and I'm here today to give an astrological perspective on current events coming from the point of view of Shamanic Egyptian Astrology. Today's date is April 2nd, 2020. I'm recording this in the afternoon, and the events that I'm going to be talking about are going to be in effect for the next several days, going on into next week. Those of you who may have listened to the first online recording that I did as part of the Venus Rising Shamanic giveaway have heard me talk about the Great Shift. I do a lot of writing on Facebook, and if you've read any of my posts there, you've encountered that there as well. And when I talk about the Great Shift, I'm talking about an alignment of planets in Capricorn that is primarily revolving around a conjunction between Saturn and Pluto. These two come into conjunction every 35 years. So having them in alignment means the beginning of a 35-year cycle. It's also the end of a 35-year cycle. This cycle that we're currently in began in 1984, 82 to 84. It's coming to completion now, and then we go forward for another 35 years. Saturn Pluto alignments, conjunctions always bring hugely transformative events on planet Earth. They really mark the beginning of a new era. And because this particular alignment has been in the sign Capricorn, this new era has to do with the dismantling of structures, societal structures, as we've known them. So there, because it's Pluto's involved, we've got death taking place, the death of structures that we have known, and the creation of new structures. And right now, recently, Saturn moved into Aquarius. It did that on March 21st. And so we're looking now at creating new structures that work on a global level and that address the needs of the collective. And this is going to be going on for a while. I can talk about that another time because what I really want to focus on right now is what's going on during these next few days. And that has to do with an alignment between Jupiter and Pluto. Jupiter is the principle of expansion. Anything Jupiter comes in contact with, it expands. Pluto is the lord of the underworld. He's the god of death. And we modern astrologers also understand he's also the god of rebirth. But you can't have birth without death. Something has to die in order for something new to be reborn. So the long and the short of it is during this time, Jupiter is expanding this process of death so that birth can happen. And this alignment started yesterday, and in some ways it started much sooner earlier than that. It's been going on for the last couple of weeks, but it's coming into being exact, and the exact conjunction between Jupiter and Pluto takes place on Saturday, April 4th, 10:45 p.m. Eastern Time. However, it's in effect now, and it's going to be in effect for the next several days going on into next week. And so the kind of upsurge of taking this very seriously, of the coronavirus situation very seriously, having concerns about it, a lot of talk about the possible number of deaths that can come out of this. This started 2 or 3 days ago. It started 2 or 3 days ago in an expanded way because there have always been voices that have been saying for the last, since this began in January, that this could end up being very, very bad. And a lot of people may die, not just in the United States, but around the world. But most certainly over the last few days, we've seen a real upsurge in concern about the number of deaths that we may be looking at, going all the way up, in our governmental structures, and looking at these deaths hovering, taking place over the next weeks, peaking over the next few weeks, and going on into the summer. And I do think some version of that is probably what's going to happen. So the difficulty with Pluto is part of what comes to us from our Greek and Roman heritage. In the United States in particular, and in the Western world in general, we're greatly influenced by the philosophical perspective of the Romans and the Greeks, who were the source, the origin of the philosophical perspective that we carry in this country. And it's interesting to note that Pluto was the name of this god of the underworld to the Romans. His Greek name was Hades. And in both of these cultures, they believed that when a person died, you went into the underworld and you never got out. You became a shade who wandered through the underworld for eternity, which is kind of a scary thing if you think about it. So I believe personally that this concept of death and an afterworld after we do die that we never get out of, that we're going to remain in forever, has a lot to do with our fear of change and therefore our fear of death. Death is simply change. So as we are moving into a time, and we've really seen the whole great shift energy of the alignment between Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn, particularly in the last 2 weeks of March, really amplify. What happened during that time was the planet Mars moved through an alignment with all three of those planets. And with each successive conjunction, we saw the energy amp up another level. And so now, with Mars having hit all three of them, Jupiter and Pluto are moving into exact alignment. And so the whole situation has amped up tremendously. And so part and parcel of that is a certain level of fear around death, fear around the unknown, uncertainty around change, what might happen, all of those things. So if any of you are feeling any of this, you are not alone, and there's an astrological reason why this is happening. One of the reasons I love the Egyptian pantheon, and one of the reasons why Linda Starwolf and I created Shamanic Egyptian Astrology, is because it brings in the archetypes of ancient Egypt, which are much older than the Greek and Roman archetypes, and overlays them on traditional astrological concepts. And while traditional astrology, which I love dearly, I've been practicing astrology since 1973, traditional astrology is very much a language of wounds. It looks at where we are wounded. The Shamanic Egyptian astrology is a language of wholeness. It brings in concepts and ideas that encourage us to look at things from a bigger picture. And so, for that reason, I find it to be a very useful tool. I in no way want to deny what's going on or to pretend that these are not difficult times. These are difficult times. And most of us have felt that our societal rules and the structures of society were not working. And for many people in the world, it's not even a matter of whether we think they're working or not. They simply do not work. And that many of us have envisioned a new way of running our country, running our world, and simply doing things differently. So the necessary dismantling of our current structures, our governmental structures, our rules of society, all of this is the area of Capricorn, is taking place. And so we have the death and dismantling of society as we know it, of governments as we know it, as economies as we know it, of our spiritual perspective as we know it, of reality as we know it, of normal, whatever normal is to you as we know it. And we're not going to go back to an old normal. I'm not an apocalyptic person. I don't think the world's going to end. I don't think we're going to, we're very resourceful. Humans are extremely resourceful. We will create new structures, but we're at a place in our growth in our society where the types of structures that we create need to really be carefully thought about and examined. So I want to come back to where we are right now, because for many people, these are difficult times. Many people are living in fear. Many people have a lot of worry. There's things happening that we don't have control over. And so one of the things I'd like to offer at this time is to go on a little journey with the Egyptian allies of Jupiter and Pluto. In the language of Shamanic Egyptian astrology, Jupiter is aligned with Horus. Horus is the young king. That's Horus right there. Okay. So Horus is he often shown as a hawk with an Uraeus, a sun perched upon his head. He's also often shown as a human with a hawk head. And he is the son of Isis and Osiris. He is the new king. In fact, he's often called the young king. And in his myth, when his father Osiris dies, he comes into a battle. He has to enter into a battle to claim his kingdom. But as he wins that battle, and youth always does win, the new always wins, he initiates a new era, a new eon. He is the principle of expansion. He flies high. He has all of that youthful energy. And so he is the rightful ally for the traditional astrological symbol of Jupiter, which is the principle of expansion. In Roman mythology, Jupiter was the king of Mount Olympus. His Greek name is Zeus. So he is the new king. He's the new model, so to speak, of leadership. Pluto, who Jupiter and Pluto are the two planets that are aligned right now. Pluto is that lord of the underworld. He is the lord of death. And again, we modern astrologers understand that you can't have death without rebirth. So he's also the lord of rebirth. In the language of Shamanic Egyptian astrology, Pluto is aligned with Horus's father, Osiris. So we have a son and a father here. And Osiris's story is that he was killed. He was killed by his brother Set, who is Mars, and he was killed not once but twice. And his wife Isis brought him back to life, and they had sexual union, and out of that union, the new king, the young king Horus, was born. So there's an added dimension to Osiris that Pluto doesn't have, in that Osiris is the Lord of Regeneration. He is associated with Orion. And when you look up in the sky and see the constellation Orion, that is also Osiris. He is associated with the green man, with regeneration. Out of death comes life. And we can think of what happens in the winter, whether it's in the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere, when everything dies away, but it's not really dead. There's tremendous growth taking place under the surface, just waiting to jump forth in the springtime. That growth itself is also Osiris. He is the death, the dieback of everything, but he is also the rebirth. And so in that image, that idea is that even in the darkest despair of death, there's always something new that's being born and something that's ready to come forth. And so what I'd like to do now is invite everyone to go on a little journey with these two and see what message that they have for you on an individual level. We all need a little help during these times. Again, if any of you are feeling a little bit of worry or concern, or if you're just outright scared or anxious or any of those things, and it's possible to have tremendous faith and hope and belief for the future, and yet also feel some worry and concern and some fear. It's not an either or. It's very much a both and. That's true for any of us when we're going through huge processes of transformation and change. And the great shift is definitely a huge process of transformation and change. So I want to invite everyone to close your eyes and take a couple of nice deep breaths. And really breathe, and expand your lungs. Breathe all the way down to your toes, all the way down to your fingertips. Exhale fully. And feel yourself dropping in. Just keep taking some nice deep breaths. These are not breathwork breaths. If you've been joining Starwolf and Nico for the weekly shamanic breathwork sessions, these are calmer breaths, and yet they're more deep than your standard meditation breaths. This is really filling up the body and also releasing. We need to fully exhale. So, and imagine that as you exhale, you're dropping in. You're dropping into your body, all the way down to your toes, all the way down to your fingertips. Letting any distractions dissolve away. Any concerns, any worries, feeling it roll right off of your shoulders. and feeling yourself dropping fully in. It's almost like as you release tension and worry, you make space for you to come in. And I want you to imagine that you are standing somewhere on the earth. And pick a favorite place, maybe in the woods, maybe on the sand at the beach, it may be in a meadow, maybe in your backyard. But it's a place that's filled with beauty for you and where you feel comfortable and you feel safe. And imagine that as you are standing there, you see two figures approaching you. They are converging and they are coming and standing in front of you, one on the left, one on the right. And the figure on the left is the young King Horus. And he may come to you in his hawk form. He may come to you as a young man with the head of a hawk. He may come in some other way. He is multifaceted, and however he shows up for you, that's exactly right. And I invite you to acknowledge him, to nod your head, to make contact with him in some way. And the figure that is on your right, also in front of you, but on your right, is Osiris. And Osiris is often portrayed as a man, looking a little bit like an Egyptian pharaoh with a headdress, and he frequently has his hands folded in front of him. He holds his staff often with his hands folded in front of him, much as if he was lying down, a corpse might have his hands folded on his chest. And there's usually a kind of a darkness to him because he is an underworld figure. When Pluto Osiris shows up, we're going on an underworld journey. So I invite you to tune in to Osiris. Make contact with him. And open yourself up, open your field to whatever degree you're comfortable. And what I mean by that is just imagine that it's almost like you have a zipper in front of you. You can sort of unzip it and you can pull open your field, but only do it to the degree that you're comfortable. And allow information from this ancient god, Osiris, the ancient Lord of Regeneration, the God of the eternal cycle of death and rebirth. After death comes life. After life comes death. That's a quote from a good friend of ours, Grandfather Mowgli. So imagine that the energy of Osiris comes in and allow him to touch in for you, elicit within you all of those feelings within you, those places where you know something in your life is dying. It might be a way of life. It might be a person. It might be a beloved animal. It might be friendships. It might be your work. It might be the way you've done things, the way you've thought. Parts of your life are dying. Parts of your life are entering their winter, their darkness. And let yourself fully acknowledge that. Death needs to be mourned. It's a process of loss. And it's only human to mourn our losses. And remember to keep breathing. It's important to keep breathing. And remembering that in traditional astrology, whenever Jupiter shows up, Jupiter expands anything it comes in contact with. So in traditional astrology, Jupiter is expanding this sense of loss and death and endings. And it's all right to feel into that, to feel what it means for you. And I invite you now to turn your attention to the young King Horus. For he brings to you messages of new life. He accelerates the process that his father holds. He accelerates the death process, but he also accelerates the regeneration, the rebirth. And during this time of letting go, of death and dying, this dark night of the soul, feel those stirrings within you of something new getting ready to be born. You may not know what it's going to be yet. That's okay. Just allow yourself to feel it. That as something ends, something new is getting ready to begin. The new king is preparing to step forth. The old king is dead. And feel yourself held in the midst of this transition between something old and familiar that's been around for a long, long time is dying away, and something new is preparing to emerge. We don't know what that is yet. We don't know what this young king's going to be like. We don't know how he's going to behave, what he's going to do, what he's going to bring us. And so I invite you to open yourself for a moment, if you're comfortable keeping that field open, to a message from either one of these two, or perhaps both, around your personal journey through this process of transformation and change. For as without, so within, as the world is changing, as the structures of society are dying off, an internal structure within you is dying as well. Attitudes that no longer serve, habits that no longer serve, ways of being that no longer serve. They're dying. An aspect of you is dying. Something new is simultaneously awakening. Feel the balance and the interplay of those two. And open yourself. I'm going to be quiet for a few seconds here, a minute or so, and let you receive your message or messages from one or both of these great archetypes. So remember to breathe, open, and receive. Taking a nice deep breath. Close your field, zip it back up. Pull those messages in, make them a part of you. And I wish now to call in the great goddess Isis. She is consort of Osiris. She is his wife and his queen. She is mother to Horus. The three of them are a family. And so I call in the Queen Mother of Heaven to wrap her rainbow wings around us all. For she holds us through all transformation and change. She is always there. We are never alone. And so feel her beautiful rainbow wings holding you, giving you strength and courage to move forth each day, to do what is yours to do. For as you change, as each of us release that which no longer serves us, that which is holding us back, that which is in our way, and open to the new that is moving through us, together we create a new world. And we need one. Even in the midst of the darkest hours of death and sorrow, the glimmer of hope lies in that vision of the new world we're creating out of the ashes. So feel her beautiful rainbow wings, the loving arms of the mother. And take a nice deep breath and come back into the room. So I thank you for being with me. And beginning next week, I have been invited to do one of these on a weekly basis. So we'll be announcing that soon, what day of the week it's going to be, what that's going to look like. But I'm going to be giving a little kind of astrological overview with emphasis on Shamanic Egyptian Astrology over the next week, starting sometime next week. So thank you very much for joining us, and tune in again. Keep track of Venus Rising and Star Wolf's page for announcements on all of the wonderful offerings that are being given by an amazing group of people from all around the world. Thank you very much, and bye for now.